All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Social Responsibility at Work podcast. My name is Angela Howard. I'm the CEO and founder of Call for Culture, and I am here with a special treat because today we have a co-host. Laura, introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Laura Louise Green. I am a licensed psychotherapist and organizational psychologist and founder of Healthy Poor. My work is rooted in mental health and well-being in the workplace. And while my business is industry agnostic, I tend to gravitate towards creative and visible careers. So stuff like hospitality, wine, entertainment, reality TV, something, those jobs that are sort of lurking in our consciousness that we don't often think about. The mental health and well-being of those folks really excites me. So happy to be here.
Me too. Me too. And this is kind of a joint podcast because I know you are launching your podcast, Our Best
so
Work.
This will probably be the first one, Our Best Work. Yeah.
And so, I mean, this was a beautiful,
honored.
Yes. And welcome, Nick Thompson, who is our guest, and very excited to talk to you. We're going to bounce it to you for an introduction in just a moment here. But, really this podcast, this platform is focused on how do we re-envision the intersection of workplace and social impact. And so actually I have a funny story to kind of go into our introduction to Nick. Laura and I met on Instagram, fun story. And we have an affinity towards like thinking about broader cultural events and how they kind of shape the workplace. And so we actually, Nick, you're gonna laugh, but her and I shared one of the reels that you had posted about your advocacy work. And I'm like, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to shoot my shot. And so that's how we got here. And Nick, just very happy to have you on. Please do an introduction so we know who you are.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for reaching out. I appreciate it. And so I'm Nick Thompson. A lot of people know me from my reality TV life on Love is Blind. But outside of what you saw on there, I am a marketing executive that works primarily in software. I also am the co-founder of the UCAN Foundation, which is the Unscripted Cast Advocacy Network nonprofit that's focused on really helping reality cast members from previous, current, and future seasons with mental health support, legal support, while also advocating for a more just and less exploitative working conditions for those folks like myself. And then I'm also the host of a podcast called Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson, where I take on special guests, or sometimes every now and then I've got something to say solo. And we talk about stigmatized issues like mental health, culture, free speech, really being a storyteller through the lens of experts or people who have these unique experiences. And I think that's about it.
That's it. Just like a few things on your plate. No big deal.
Oh, yeah. And I'd be remiss not to say, I also recently started a in real life singles events organization with a couple, with my friend Anita Chapala, who's a dating and relationship couples counselor here in Chicago. So we have an event coming up. I guess I don't know when this is coming out, but the event is on January 24th here in Chicago. So we're excited about that too.
Amazing.
Just a few things.
Yeah.
And I'm a dog dad. To like the
yes, we know that. Yes. Oh my gosh. What is your dog's name again? Remind me.
His name is Grayson.
Grayson.
Yeah. I got Barley over here on the couch, just sleeping in his turtleneck.
What kind of dog is Barley?
Barley is a pit bull shepherd lab super mutt mix. He's the sweetest boy. Oh yeah, he's about 60 pounds.
Oh wow. Okay, so I was going to say pick him up, but I don't think you should pick him up.
Yeah, all your equipment's going to fall over.
It's the whole like let sleeping dogs lie. Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh,
cute,
it's so funny because I'm like, let sleeping dogs lie, and then I look at him and he like lifts his leg for a belly rub, and it's like, well,
there it goes.
Yeah, obsessed with him.
They're the best.
Yeah, I don't have any pets. I'm so sad. I wish I had a little doggy or something. But
maybe that's a goal for 2025.
It is. Or I can just come over to Laura's house and have all the snuggles.
It's a whole menagerie here.
Well, we're very happy to have you on the podcast, Nick. I think there is so much to unpack with, I have a million questions, but one of the things that Laura and I did in researching for this episode is that we wanted to go back to like the research of when we started to talk about the idea of reality TV. Are people contestants? Are we considered workers? Are we considered contestants? Are we considered contractors? And the research goes back pretty far. Like this has been talked about, and it's just so interesting that we're still having this conversation. So Laura, do you want to kind of maybe put some foundation here on what we found, and then we'd love to ask you some questions and get some perspective from you.
Yeah, and like I'll start by saying that this is really accessible research to find. I just went to Google Scholar and I typed in reality TV contestants' mental health, and I found research dating back to 2010. So you've been on a show, The Life Cycle of Labor of Reality Television Contestants. That's 2019. Let's see, Surviving Reality TV, The Ultimate Challenge for Reality Show Contestants. That's 2010. And there's stuff coming out. Here's 2023, 2024, Dark Side of Reality TV, a case study.
I've participated
humor and laughter
in
on
some
reality
coming
TV.
out too. There's even
Say what?
more. I've participated in some that's going to be coming out or is in peer review right now too. Yeah, there's it goes back, and you'd have to search different terms, but it even goes back further, because if you think about the origin of reality TV, it really started in the 80s and the early 90s with your Jerry Springers and your Sally Jesse Raphaels and Cops and all of these shows that came out during that writer's strike, that WGA strike back then, where it was really, putting that baseline for reality TV, even though that term wasn't defined at the time.
Right. And it's interesting, looking back at the sort of history of the influx of reality TV eras, you can directly correlate it with writer strikes. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, we're seeing like, okay, the exploitation of participants and contestants on reality TV is a direct response to people fighting for better pay and better working conditions. So like it's not an isolated issue at all. It's very much tied in with other forms of exploitation within other kinds of industries.
When you peel the onion back, it is very clear that the exploitation of reality TV and all of that stems very much from the unionization of writers, producers, and SAG-AFTRA. And when that strike was happening in 2023 with the WGA and then SAG-AFTRA, there was going to be an influx of reality TV. I actually had a reel on this where I kind of broke down the little bit of history we talked about in a much more digestible, 60-second format. But one of the things that I thought was so interesting about that is I kind of saw this unity point, because if you think about reality TV cast members, they are kind of they're viewed as almost like the ugly stepchild or less than performers that are working in Hollywood, productions and stuff like that. But in reality, I went to a march here with SAG, and I was talking to people in a one-on-one place to build unity. And I have talked to executives up at SAG-AFTRA as well. And I was like, the reason that we should be working together is because they're just going to replace more and more of the content that's being produced in Hollywood with more and more reality TV, because it's cheaper. They don't have to pay the cast members the same amount you have to pay performers. There is no union. There is no residuals. So as time goes on and the longer your strike goes, if we're not unified on these things, they're just going to keep replacing you until you make up 5% of the content. And then you're going to have no leverage or anything like that. So we actually have to come together as performers, building content across all of these platforms, traditional and non-traditional. And that unity there is how we're going to actually save the entertainment industry and make sure that we don't go back, 50 years or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the crux of a lot of this, and Laura and I were talking about this earlier, is, and this kind of transfers over to, I think, some of the work Laura is doing in hospitality. When we see humans as entertainment, we dehumanize them. Right. And we forget that they're actually in an environment where there are conditions that are either being met or not being met. And so can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you? And like some of the, because I know we're talking about, I mean, if anyone's listening right now, they're kind of deducting that the conditions were not great and that's a problem, but like tell us more about that
Yeah.
and how that was for you.
Well, what I think is important to note for this is I sometimes feel like I talk about this stuff a lot, right, with the work that I'm doing and I'm helping others do. And I think that one of the things I've realized is a lot of people, they do what reality TV has done is it's democratized fame, but it also makes people feel like they know you and they're closer to you than they actually are. The reality is when someone watched me on Love is Blind, they actually don't know, and they might know a little bit more about me than they know about Brad Pitt playing, a role in a movie, but they don't know that much. And the content that they're getting is curated to tell a specific story. So what is difficult for people, I believe, and I think there's probably research that would support this, is when you see something, the perception of it is that it's real, but you don't have that block of this is a scripted show. Even though it's unscripted, storylines are crafted and then they're told to you with curated content in and out of order or whatever that might be. So my call to action for people who want to view reality TV, which I'm totally fine with. I don't judge you. I don't want to kill reality TV. I just want to make it more ethically. What I encourage people to do is just watch it with your eyes open and realize that like you're watching a curated piece of content designed to tell a specific story that may or may not be an accurate representation of that person, that relationship, that storyline, or whatever it is. So if you watch it with that lens, I think that it can kind of like maybe help some people stop and say, okay, I'm not going to judge this person. They're not going to live rent free in my head. I'm not going to go say something mean to them on social media or gossip about them on Reddit or something like that. And then, lastly, on that piece, I think that we have from New Camp Foundation, we have a moveon.org petition that is still live, where I'm just trying to get enough signatures that we can put people or put a card at the beginning of every reality show that says, hey, just a reminder, these are for entertainment purposes only. These are real people, but things can be edited out of control. They can be misrepresented. So watch it for entertainment purposes only. Because the amount of death threats people get, the amount of horrible things people say, I'm tough. Like, I don't care what people think about me, which was why, I was kind of like, I don't really care. Like, I know who I am, but there's some times where you get a comment, you get a DM, or you see something about yourself and it's just a moment of doubt or a moment of being down, and it hurts and it stings. And then there's people whose lives were just completely disrupted and ruined in a lot of cases, and they still get it. And sometimes it's for something they never even said or did, and it's all editing. And so I just want to encourage people, and then I'll get to the other piece of the question. Watch these things for entertainment only. These are real people. They do have positive and negative impacts that come to their life from this experience. So I encourage you to do that. So from working conditions, back to your the second part of that question, when I was going through it, they very much guide you into a mindset that everything that's happening is part of the process. So I say that, in reflection, because it took me a long time going through all of this and felt like I lost control of my life from very early on, and things were happening and I was just forced to react, which isn't a good for your nervous system. It's like not good for your mental health. It's not good for anything. And so it took me a really long time to like stop and be able to sit down and process over months, and I would say even years, all of this stuff that had happened. But when you're filming this show, especially the parts for people who don't understand or know about the show, on this show, you date 15 women and 15 women date 15 men, and you speed date and you narrow it down without ever seeing each other. So you go into these things called pods, you hear each other's voice, you can converse, you narrow it down or you don't, and you go home, and then some people fall in love. And if you get engaged, then you get to see each other for the first time. Then you decide over the next few weeks if you want to get married, with a finale of the episode being at the altar with the couples that have made it. So keeping that in mind, when you go, you film for the first 3 weeks, you are completely isolated. They take your phone, they take any access to the internet, they go through your suitcase to make sure you're not bringing anything. They take your wallet, they take your passport. You are sitting in a hotel room without a hotel key. You're not allowed to leave your room without permission. And then they shuttle you to the set, which is big and beautiful and Hollywood. Like, that was one thing I was like, whoa, this is like really Hollywood. And then you're filming for 16, sometimes 18 hours a day, doing your dates. And then there's times when you're hanging out in the lounge, which they perceive as or present as the living quarters. It's all a set. You're not allowed to leave unless you ask permission to go to the restroom, or that's pretty much it. But you're just there, mic'd, being filmed for 16, sometimes 18 hours a day. Then you're back in that shuttle, you're back to that hotel room, and you're up to do it again by 8 a.m. the next day. And then you do that for 10 days. And then we went to Mexico. The vacation location varies, but I got engaged. We went to Mexico, in which, again, you're shuttled to the airport. You're given your passport right before security. They take it away from you right after. No money, no autonomy. We spent a couple days in Cancun in a hotel, not a resort, a hotel, without ID, without money, without anything. We were allowed to leave our rooms there to go work out or go to the pool, but you really don't want to do too much without an ID in a foreign country, or any money. So, then you come home and you get a little bit of your freedom back as you're filming, mostly on nights and weekends, several days a week. It varied week to week. And ultimately, that whole condition is at the time, you're just kind of like, this is the process, trust the process. It's built this way because it has to be this way. So when you're not getting enough or adequate food or water, like, it's fell to the waste. Like, can I get some water? Yeah. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it never comes, that kind of thing. So through this whole process, you're just kind of like trusting the process. I can't tell you how many times they say, trust the process. Don't link up with someone too soon. Trust the process. And it just kind of becomes this, like, I've said this before, this like cult-like mentality where you're just trusting the process, being filmed 18 hours a day, being locked in your hotel room, not being able to talk or call anyone or have that structure of your whole life, which I don't think, until people go through something like this, I don't think anyone can understand what it's like to have the structure of your life just completely ripped away from you. Maybe after COVID, kind of, but like the not being able to eat and drink when you want to, work out when you want to, go on a walk, see the sunlight, all of this stuff. And, while you're going through this, you're just trusting the process, especially if you're, someone who's kind of navigating a very serious relationship with someone that you've never seen over the course of a few days.
Wow. Yeah, that is, there's so many. Laura, my head's spinning because
I'm boiling over here.
It goes down to like basic needs, like humane treatment. And I think the way the show is structured is like, this is a social experiment, right?
Exactly.
So that's probably
psychological social experiment.
It's
which
a psychological,
it is, but not the way you think.
Yes. Well, that's like my next question, because, you probably have heard this before, but, and this is not how we feel, but I think some people are probably listening to this and saying, well, you opted into this, so what are your thoughts on that? And then like, what is the responsibility? What do you feel like is the responsibility of a producer to ensure that those conditions are humane? It's like basic level stuff, right?
Well,
food, water, sunlight.
Exactly. It is. But I think, so the you signed up for it crowd, I have a lot of feelings on, but if I were to sum it up, I think that there is a couple different places that comes from within a person. The first one, I think, is someone who just doesn't know, but they're probably open-minded to hear me speak about this or others speak about their working conditions on the set. And I think those people just should have that conversation, should listen to podcasts and conversations like this and open up their mind to something they just didn't know. Then I think there's the people who say, well, you signed up for it, you got fame, and this is just the price of doing business kind of
pay,
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think those people still need to be educated, don't understand that the structure of this is literally built to break people down. Like there's like literal
That's
torture
key.
techniques
Yes.
of withholding stuff to get people to do things, and all of this stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you really don't know you sign up for. And I look at the contract, right? And I go into that contract and I read the whole thing. I even had some amendments made due to my career and my job at the time. And you go through that, and I read the part, for example, that we can misrepresent you, we can defame you, you can't go against the editor, you're going to be sued for $1 million, like all of these things in there. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to say or do anything out of context or out of character, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm sure everybody reads that part and thinks I'm a good person. And guess what? Just because you're a good person, and I didn't get, a bad edit, I would say there were misrepresentations, but there are people that I've talked to that have gotten horrible edits. They were literally edited into saying and doing things they didn't say and do. And so when people lose their jobs or their businesses and stuff like that, like you can't anticipate that having not gone through it. So I think some people just need like that deeper level of understanding. And then I think there's a part of the population that are jealous and think they could have done it better, or are projecting some sort of insecurity that they saw from a past relationship or something that they're seeing on TV, like, people have been abused or something like that. And unfortunately, reality TV promotes that type of behavior much more than they promote healthy communication and relationships. So I think there's some people that just kind of have that like bitterness. I don't even care to talk to them. I wish them well, because if they're getting that upset about reality TV, I think there's something else going on there. But to the other people, I just invite you to listen, try and be empathetic and understand that people go into this with good intentions, and they go into it not even necessarily with good intentions to go get married, but good intentions to be like, I'm going to have a platform after this, I'm going to be famous. Like, those aren't bad intentions. That's what this is supposed to be. So we can't punish people for going into something that's been literally sold to them as a whole, psychological love experience, when in reality it's a very structured environment where you don't have a lot of control, and you're basically being dictated what to say and do and talk about for, the whole time.
I was telling Angela before we started recording, like, I remember watching your season and I was like, okay, Chicago, let's go. And texting with my girlfriends as we all started it at the same time, as is common. And I remember texting them like, oh my God, they're all wasted. They are all so drunk right now. And that's when I was like, I don't know that I feel right participating in this.
Can you give consent to this stuff when you're wasted? Like,
but
you know what I mean?
Like
it becomes a question of that.
Yes, exactly. And then also, like, I'm watching everybody with their little gold goblets, and I'm like, how easy to edit when you can't see the levels of the drink.
That's why they use them.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so then it also brings a question of like, and this is something that I play a lot with in my work of like in hospitality and in entertainment. Like when we see these rock stars like die of drug overdose, or they take their own lives or whatever, and people are like, oh man, that business is a hard business. I'm like, but you participate in that and you tolerate that. And so there's, I think, also this social responsibility of the audience to watch critically, to your point, Nick.
Yes.
And say like, is this worth my Wednesday night?
What I like to compare this to, because I'm with you, and I'm not shaming anyone for watching it. I actually had a very heartwarming conversation with a lady I met towards the end of summer last year at the farmer's market. And she told me, and this was, there's a lot of times with like the foundation and this work, like it's hard. Like it is really, it's hard to keep reliving it, but also it's hard to, like, the media comes after you with BS headlines, and they try to like control the narrative, they shadow ban you, like they threaten other cast members not to talk to you. Like, it's a very lonely, isolating thing to do. And I was at this point where I was like, do I want to keep doing this? And I met this person, and she's in my neighborhood, and she's like, I really appreciate the work you're doing. I have no idea. And now me and my girlfriend sit down to watch this, and we're watching it from like the point of view of how you speak about it. And we're seeing these things so clearly that are abusive, that are seem like they're misedited, that are designed to tell a specific story instead of accurately represent what's going on with these people. And so, hearing that and her, thanking me for opening her eyes to it, it was a very, humbling experience. And I think that that's the kind of mindset people should watch it with. Because I'm not saying, again, like, don't watch it. I'm just saying be a part of the community and be a part of the activism that's trying to change this so people's lives don't get ruined. So people are paid accordingly for. Netflix is going to be showing season 2, all seasons, always until the end of days. And I'll never get paid from it again. And it's I made $1,000 a week while I was filming. That's it. It's a stipend. It's not even a salary or any type of lump sum. And now I know they've changed that a little bit since then, but those things happen. And I would like people to watch it with a critical eye. And what's so interesting that I've learned about reality TV is what you see on the screen or what you see on your phone or your tablet or wherever you're watching it. That is the story. That's the baseline content, but that's not it. It is about the community around it. It's a very inclusive community. So it's about the people that watch it and commentate on it. It's about the people that are from other shows or other seasons who talk about it, who gossip about it, who speculate about it. It's about carrying those storylines onto much bigger platforms on the media and the news and Entertainment Tonight. And then it's also about those YouTubers that comment on it and do commentary reaction videos. It's about the therapists and the psychologists who are assessing what they're seeing in the relationships and doing that on a podcast. It's about the Reddit threads on the shows, on the couples, on the people, and how those are often infiltrated to push specific storylines. Sometimes what you've seen on screen, sometimes things that, this person had a secret girlfriend and went on the show anyway. Like those things are all being bubbled up and pushed as part of the community. So I think that the whole reality TV space isn't just about the content you're seeing on the screen. It's about the community involved. And that community there, that's all of us. We all have the power to fight for the right things and fight for the people as individuals, because otherwise people's lives are being ruined and it's for your entertainment. And I think that's something that people need to come to terms with, as you were saying, Laura, is you do have a responsibility. And I think at the bare minimum, it's to watch it, recognizing that these people are human beings. And that's what's most important to remember when you find yourself getting super invested.
It's like going to it's like going to the Coliseum.
I describe it as
people
that.
Battle it up. Yeah.
And if you think about the fall of the Roman Empire, is apparently me and every other dude has fallen obsessed with lately. But the Roman Empire was collapsing. They had spread themselves too thin militarily. They had warlords coming in, mercenaries coming in, and they were poor. Like the economy was tanked. And so one of the ways that they decided to keep people at bay was to start circuses and the Colosseum fights. And if you think about it, then people are fighting with each other. They're pointing and laughing at their neighbor or rooting for them to lose a battle and then eventually get eaten by a tiger and like all of this other crazy stuff. And it was all to keep people entertained and turned against each other and to realize what was going on. And I think you could draw some comparisons to reality TV, to the Colosseum fights, the circuses, the Hunger Games, the Squid Games. I just watched an episode of Mr. Beast's new show. I can't remember what it's called. And I was sitting there and I'm like, this is like horrible. It's literally people turning on each other to make it a little bit farther in the game to maybe make a little bit more money. Yeah. And so it's like, we're at that point where I think that reality TV is part of that. And now that's a game show, but a lot of these game shows or contests, like they may have a little different rules, but it's the same kind of issues going on. So we can't turn against each other just because we see something on TV and mistake it for reality.
And let's call it for what it is. It's manipulation and social engineering in a way, right? I mean, that is literally what's happening. And so my work is focused on like systems and I also have a background in organizational psychology. So I work a lot within corporations. And it's a very, because you can make the argument like, hey, you opt in to work at this toxic workplace, right? And so it's a similar conversation, but there is, some things are by design. Let's just say that. Some things are by design. And so the lack of accountability here, I think going back to the conversation around like, what can we do differently as consumers and our responsibility around that? What do you think some of the responsibilities are of producers? Like,
yeah, you did
what do we need to change there so that this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think this could probably be like a 5-hour conversation, but I think there's a few things that production companies and producers of reality TV could do immediately. One is be completely transparent about your process. Tell people, you can tell people like, yeah, you're not going to have access to your phone for 3 weeks. But what you didn't clearly tell any of us was that you were going to take our passports, that you were going to put us in hotel rooms without keys and not let us do anything without asking permission, including going to the bathroom. And, you could be clear about that. You could also immediately pay people more than a stipend. And actually treat your content creators, the people that are driving your content, the people that are making money for you, also known as employees. You can train that or treat them properly, pay them properly. And then one of the things that I think is really important, based on my experience and some of the other things that I've seen and heard, I think that there's a level of manipulation and psychological manufacturing this psychological environment where, you're hungry, you're tired, you're thirsty, you're making life-altering decisions every single day. You're in this controlled environment. You don't have access to your support system. You don't have access to your structure, to your gym, to how you clear your head, whatever that is. And so, and I understand that some of that's needed for some of these shows, but what I would like to see is therapists or psychologists that are on set that are independent of production. And the reason that I think it needs to be independent is because if production is supplying them, production is paying them, they are in debt to production. And so when I hear, and there's a lot of ethical issues that we could dive into, I'm sure you've got a ton of them, and I'd love to share some work we're doing at the foundation around that. But there is a moral and ethical responsibility that I think gets overshadowed by the capitalism of it all, which is the production companies paying you, and now you need to tell them what's going on with the person, so they know what buttons to push, what buttons not to push, what they're thinking. And these are the things that go on some of these shows. And when I think back to
disclose what happens in like sessions with people,
well, because they're not real sessions, they're part of the show. They're talent. In some cases, they're talent. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's and then I even think like, well, I did a psychological examination. You sign away your right to see your psychological examination results. So they give them to production. So production knows who you are, what makes you tick. They know that I have road rage. They know like all of these things about you from a psychologist conducting an examination and then handing it over to production, and you don't even ever get to see it. And you can't. They make you sign away your right to see that. So that's before it even starts. And so when you look at this stuff, and then you have, claims, oh, we have therapists on set or whatever, it's been told to death. But in my show, in my season, my ex-wife had a panic attack. There was no support for her whatsoever. In fact, they made her film, me film. They didn't even tell me. We were separated due to some COVID protocol, and I was filming and she was in the hotel room, and they sent me in there and just said, go talk to her. She's on the end of the bed. Stay close to her because we got to pick up her sound from your mic because she's not mic'd. And I was like, okay. I go in there. I had no idea. No one told me she had a panic attack. There was no help. There was no support there at all. And when I think about that, like if there was an independent mental health person that was working with her, working with us, working with me, they should have the ability to go in and quickly evaluate with that person whether or not they should continue filming today, whether they need a break, whether they need to go home, or whatever that is that's their medical professional, right? And that kind of thing right there, I compare to the NFL, who has an independent neurologist on the sidelines that now does concussion testing and protocol. And why that person's independent is because if the team doctor was in the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady had a concussion, they'd be like, yeah, let's go get that ring. Whereas the independent person, they're solely the advocate for that player outside of the football field and what their life's going to be like if they play with a concussion. So it's very similar, in my view, of providing independent mental health experts on set for each person, for each couple, whatever that is, that have the autonomy to make decisions with that person on whether or not they can continue to film or should be filmed.
I know Laura is just.
I know you must be.
I knew that they did psychological evaluations before the show, and part of me always suspected that it became a puzzle to piece together the most potentially conflicting personalities.
I definitely think they use them. They're not using them to make sure you're mentally fit. I'm sure they weed out some people that would be a real problematic, but they're definitely using those things to understand people better, maybe potentially match people for oil and water or whatever that is.
Sure. Yeah. And just like exploring that line of liability of like, how close can we push people to get the drama enough without going over the edge that it's really, really bad, And I think the line, like the work that you're doing is moving that line a little closer to healthy and saying like, but what if we moved it just a little bit? Like, I don't know, like I would watch Love is Blind because I loved the idea. And of course I'm a psychologist, but like,
well, that's why I went on the show, because I loved the idea.
Yo, that first season was so much fun, especially like, oh, how cool. And then it just became the drama. And, coming back to like my little group chat with my girlfriends, I was like, I really just I want people to fall in love. I want to see that this works.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to see. I don't want to see them fighting. That's exhausting. I'm almost 40. I'm not interested in that. You know what I mean?
Well, that was the thing. I want to see
people fall in love.
I think people do want to see that. And then I think it's like, I came here for love, but I stayed for the train wreck. But there are, I think, a lot of that show's being watched. There's 2 seasons a year now. Everybody watched. It's the most watched reality show for sure. But there are people, I think, that are like, I came here for love, and that's not what this is about anymore. Yeah. Or was it ever? Because you got to escalate, right? That's the thing. You just got to keep escalating.
Each season,
it's like the gladiator games. Yeah, fighting human against human became boring, so they did human versus animal.
Yeah.
Nick, what about the transition from, there's a few probably transitions that happened, right? Like you mentioned, from the set to Cancun and then back to your real life, which was also filmed. But I'm thinking more so when the cameras shut off. How was that transition for you? And that's probably another problematic piece, right? Which is, what is the responsibility of these shows to ensure the healthy, smooth transition? And then also checking in on things like mental health and the impact of the show, given the conditions you were in.
So I have a ton I could say there too. But I think one of the most interesting things to me was the day after filming, they're just gone. And now, in my situation, I'm sitting there with a new wife whom, we have no idea how to be in a relationship that isn't orchestrated, planned by production, right? And so there were a few days throughout that time where we, didn't film. But for the most part, we were being told where to go, what to do, and what to talk about. And so then it was like the next day, and we're like, well, what do we do? Like, we went out to dinner. We made that decision. But it was like, where do we go? Like, what do we, like, even after the wedding, when they packed up and left and it was just the party, we were like, are we allowed to cut our cake? Like, can we eat our cake? Like, those are the things we were like wondering. And when I look back on those things, like that transition back to real life is then, you're married. You both have expectations of what that looks like, but you've never really worked that out. Do you move in together right away? That's kind of crazy after 7 weeks. Do you introduce each other to family and friends? Like, how do you do that? Oh, by the way, I had this trip planned. Like, it's just like a very, very weird and challenging way to integrate your lives together. And I think there should be a responsibility there at the very least, if not having like some sort of integration plan, which would be ideal, but have mental health counseling available, individuals and
couples.
And couples. And that was one of our challenges, was we couldn't find a couples counselor because it was the middle of COVID. Everyone was overbooked. And so, I was asking them for help. Like, can you guys help us just find someone? You don't even have to pay for it, even though the contract said they would pay for a certain amount of sessions. Just help us find someone, because we can't find anyone. Like, call in a favor. You're freaking Netflix. You're Kinetic Content. Call in a favor, And so I think like that. And then I think they got to stay out of it. I think they have to give you the autonomy to have your own HIPAA, all of this stuff. But like, I've heard stories that they will pay for counseling for someone and then go to the therapist and request the counseling notes, or stop paying for it if they felt like you were good enough to go. It's just like, there's crazy stories like that. And I think it needs to be, the aftercare needs to be in the hands of the people that need it, and funded by production, because they're about to make a lot of money on you. And, one of the things I kept thinking in my situation was, it's like, man, they've got to care. Like, this is like, we're a success story. This show hinges on this experiment working. And then I realized, kind of as like I reflected on all this, I'm like, they really wouldn't have cared if we showed up just completely like ready for divorce, which we couldn't even do if we wanted to at the time, because you're contracted that you can't get divorced until after the show airs. So it's like, which whether that's enforceable or not is a whole nother conversation. But they would have almost maybe preferred if we came in separated to the reunion and had all of that drama. So it's just a very it's an uncaring, ungentle after model. And I think that it needs to be empowering to the funded by production, but empowering to the cast members to do and say what they need, try and get what they need, offer them the support and the financing to get that, so that people don't completely deteriorate and spiral out of control.
Yeah, I know there was, we could probably talk for, like you said, 5 more hours, because there's so much to unpack here. But there's just a kind of tie a bow. And Laura, I will have you have the last word, and then some last maybe calls to action from Nick. But what I'm hearing is, if you are a consumer of reality TV or any entertainment, again, I can see the parallels to bartending, to serving. Like, there's this, I think that there's this dehumanization around people who entertain us or serve us. See this with new eyes. I hope this podcast provides that perspective. And I think there's some great work, Nick, that you're working on to make that even more explicit and more built into the system, so that people are kind of forced to do that before they watch reality TV. And then just the freaking working conditions. Can we just talk about humane working conditions that include things like care and responsibility around the humans in your care? And the same thing for post reintegration is, I love the word aftercare, right? Like, these are humans that you have put through literally an experiment, a social experiment. There's a responsibility. Yes, in the public eye, there's a level of vulnerability. Even around Laura and I were talking about the topic of, like, there's a vulnerability in all of you, joining a show to find love, right? And that's like such a vulnerable topic. And so just the reintegration back into real life, I'm putting that in quotations, is so key. And there is a responsibility there. Laura, final thoughts.
So much money off of it too. That's the piece that
makes so much money.
The exploitation.
And then you're like instantly recognizable. And I can't express enough how challenging that is. And I even this week was talking to my therapist, and I was like, I just realized this weekend that I have social anxiety from this, because I usually stay in my favorite neighborhood, but I went out to meet people in the West Loop, which here in Chicago is, I say that's the demo. That's where the demographic of people that watch these shows. And I walk into a very, very busy, popular bar there, and I'm just like, oh, these people are all like recognizing me. And now am I going to be talking to people about, like, and it's just like, I just really want to be here and watch football with my friends. And so it was just like the first time I'd been like in that for a while. And I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that this was a thing for me. So it's just
Yeah.
post life. It's just a lot of it's a lot of people just know you, and it's been several years now. So it's not as bad as it was at the time where you couldn't go to the grocery store. Like I couldn't go to the grocery store without people
Wow.
stopping, which doesn't bother me. Like I understood, I stood up for that, but like a lot of people don't know how to handle that. They're not used to everybody watching them when they're at a bar or when they're at the
Yes.
grocery store. What are you buying? Like, what are the, it's like crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things like that I don't think people can account for that really deserve support in, and not just
Yes.
what they gave us, which was delete mean comments and block people.
Mm.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. And like
No.
your life changes overnight. Like those episodes
Literally.
drop and your life changes overnight. So like, like Angela says, my background, I started in like music and theater and then like really fell into hospitality. And so when Drink Masters came on, I saw a lot of my peers and friends, like their lives changed overnight. And that isn't even to the degree of what Love is Blind is, you know. But what I hear a lot, and this definitely like aligns with my work and like my dissertation about food. So I wrote my dissertation on food entertainment media and how
Okay.
it impacts careers, culinary careers, which of course moves into reality TV. And what I saw in that is that people were driven by, when chefs decided to go on these shows or when they wanted to do it, it was driven by, I want to open my restaurant someday and I don't think I'm going to get investors otherwise, or I need to do this for
Mm-hmm.
my career. So people are putting
Mm.
themselves in the public eye for their career because they don't see any other way. And so these decisions, and we saw that with a little bit with Drink Masters too, but with you all, I see this, like, especially those early seasons, it was like, I want to meet the love of my life. And so I think there's a degree too of willing to put up, there's an abuse tolerance that you're willing to put up with. Like you said, trust the
Mm.
process. But isolating you all is a part of that. We see that with chefs too.
Yes.
They're isolated into nightlife. You hang out with only those people. Like no one else gets you. This is only for us. You'll never no one else will ever understand this. And so then
Yeah.
it isolates you and then you become even more exploitable.
Yeah.
So we
And I
have
think,
these systems all playing into each other.
and I remember when I was going through the process, because they reached out to me on LinkedIn. I've gotten that, and my last 3 jobs on LinkedIn. So that's why I was asking you earlier if you were using LinkedIn. But what I found interesting is, as I was going through this process, I was like, I'm not easily manipulated. I think critically about everything to a fault. These producers aren't going to get me to say or do anything I'm not going to say or do. What I didn't account for was this level that you're talking about of manipulation, because I had no idea
Mm.
how my mind and my body would react to being filmed 18 hours a day, to not seeing sunlight, to being locked in a hotel room. I mean, I just didn't, until you do that, you have no idea how you're going to react to it. And I think that does put people in vulnerability. And I think that it wasn't as fast as they made it look on the show, but like Danielle and I connected very quickly. And in the first day, I was probably ready to go home. I was maybe 12 dates in, and 11 or 12 dates in, and I was just like not connecting with anyone. And I was like, oh, I guess this just isn't going to work for me. And I was prepared to go home or go through the whole thing, like mentally. I was comfortable
Mm.
with whatever happened as long as it was organic. And we connected right away, where everyone else, it was to the last minute, like in love triangles, as you saw some of them, or
Yes.
people, grasping at straws or being uncertain if they like this person, but do I really want to get engaged to them, or do I want to? So there's all these heavy emotions that you're making. So what I think happened to me is, because I connected so quickly, all of these things that I was doing didn't matter, because I was focused on determining if this person was going to be someone that I want to get engaged to, that I want to
Exactly.
see, that I want to go on
Yes.
vacation with, that I want to bring to my
Exactly.
family. And so I was focused on that, and a lot of the other stuff, and the stuff that I reflect on now I saw as problematic, wasn't even on my radar, because I was just there
Mm.
to figure out if this person could be someone I could see myself spending my life with.
Mm.
And there's some people
Yes.
that are like, how do I go further so I can get more fame? I'm not saying that. And I would
Sure.
argue with the way the producers cast these things, like that's a fair thing now, because they're doing that on purpose. in the way that they cast people. So that's a fair enough reason to go on. I think they own some responsibility in the casting instead of blaming the people that go on for fame when you're, doing psych evaluations and all this stuff and putting people in these situations. So I could go on and on about that too. But I would just say, I think you're right. Like the level of manipulation is much bigger than anybody thinks or anybody can understand. I don't even think I fully understand it.
I was going to say, I'm not sure even contestants quite understand. And Angela and my trained eyes are like able to sort of see these systems and exploitative systems and stuff, but I don't think the run of the mill audience member, and I don't think, and especially when you're in it, you don't know. You don't.
I'm so tired, and you got to say this way, Nick, and then we'll let you go. You got to say this way. Can you say it like this? Oh, and then the other thing too, like you would do these interviews, the ones where you're sitting, right? And sometimes they would be interviewing about something that happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You're like, I don't really remember exactly what happened. And guess who's there to tell you? The producer. Did it even really happen that way? Why are you talking about it again? You know what I mean? So like those little things there, and you just don't know, and you're tired, and you're hungry in some cases,
it's
thirsty.
Traumatic.
Yeah.
It is
and
traumatic.
I've heard this story from someone on Married at First Sight whose kid was calling, and they wouldn't let her take the phone call until she said what they wanted her to say on camera.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
That's like,
these are the things that are going on that are just that's like a torture tactic, right?
Yeah.
You tell me what I want to hear, right or wrong, and then you get the cookie, the phone, to leave, a meal.
Well,
can we end it on a higher note?
I know, I was just thinking.
I'm like, how do I? Well, I mean, honestly, Nick, I think we need to have the real conversation here. Like, and I'm so grateful for you sharing your story. I mean, I know it's not easy, and I know you're under the weather. So just thank
I know.
you.
If anyone's listening to this and you've ever heard me before, or you haven't, I don't always sound like this.
He has a very sultry edge to him today due to a little bit of sickness. But I think the positive is you're working on mobilizing action around this. And so what we will do is ensure we put in the notes the petition that you're working on, links to help people take action. And I think the real value of this is people need to see this different perspective. We need to humanize people who are not characters in a movie or a show. Like, these are human beings and it's real life. And there are some systematic changes that need to be made to improve the conditions for these humans.
And the National Labor Relations Board in December determined that Love is Blind cast members are misclassified as contractors when we should be employees. Now, there's court coming for that in April. I would imagine they'll fight this as far and as hard as they can. There's changes coming in with the new administration. But what I think is important about this, and I think a good call to action for fans is, people from Love is Blind right now are able to freely speak unconditionally about their working conditions and their experiences on this show while we're going through this process. So listen to the people that are speaking, because they are allowed to do this because as an employee, you're allowed to talk about your working conditions. Yeah. Whereas a contractor, they can NDA you into never being able to speak freely.
That's absolutely right.
That's a huge change. That could change the face of reality TV, starting with Love is Blind.
Starting with Love is, and this is only Love is Blind right now. It doesn't apply.
It only covers Love is Blind.
Too
right
Hot
now.
to Handle and The Bachelor.
There may be some other shows coming soon, but
that. But
that's because
it starts.
I filed.
Starts with one.
Exactly. I started it, and then we had Renee Poche from season 5 of Love is Blind. So that was the first one that came down about a month ago.
Yeah.
So this is the first step of freeing people from what I believe in the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, believe to be illegal contract clauses, misclassifications. And this is the foundational step to being able to join a union like SAG-AFTRA or form our own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the high note. What wonderful work that you're doing to move this forward. And just so appreciative of your time. Laura, last word.
I don't know. I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm shocked that it hasn't happened sooner. But like, well done. This, like, pushing up against such a massive machine takes such incredible bravery, and it's very, very scary. And I think that can't go unacknowledged. So like,
thank you for saying that.
Like, it's awesome that you're doing this. I think I hope to see more people follow suit in speaking out about their experiences on these shows and being maybe a little bit more honest with themselves too about what it was like for them.
I think so too. Thank you for saying that. And last piece I'll say on that is, you know, I'm doing this. I started doing this because I feel like I had to, because someone had to do it. And, you know, what I went through, what my ex-wife went through, what we went through together, shouldn't happen to people who are good people just trying to find love. And I think, you know, I'm speaking now and started speaking so that others could speak. And then collectively we could come together and change this for the future. So I appreciate you saying that and recognizing that. And I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being a voice for change. And thank you for talking to us. I think this was like, I knew this conversation was going to be fire, because like the perspective that we all have just really, I think, brought to light the action. And that's really what this podcast is about. Is it's not just about listening on your run or your ride home. Like, we want people to leave with very specific action to go do something. And you did that for us today. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And thanks, Laura, for co-hosting with me. We got to do this more often.
Thank you for having me. I squealed when you sent me that note. I was like, yes, let's go.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.